What's good, CDL fans? Today we're going to be predicting the standings and the bracket for Major 3. I went through every single match. I figured out who I think is going to beat who. Obviously, this is just my prediction. I'm probably going to be wrong. Hopefully, I am wrong, because as I always say in these videos, if I get all of these right, it's kind of boring and too straightforward. So we're going to do this going through every single one. Well, I already went through every single one, and I'm going to put them here on the tier list. So as you can see, I have it broken down. This is standings. This isn't actually tiers. I'm just using a tier list for the sake of simplicity for visual. So the top 1 and 2 seed will be 1 and 2 in the top row. You kind of will get how it works as we go through it. So let's get it started with the number 1 team in my prediction. I got Atlanta FaZe with a 5-0 record. Looking at FaZe's schedule, they play Ultra, Ravens, Heretics, Falcons, and OPTIC. So not the easiest schedule, right? Obviously, Ultra's a good team. Ravens is a good team. OPTIC is obviously a quality team, even though they've been a little bit hit or miss recently. We know what they can do with HAVOK on the roster. Falcons, brand new team. Miami brings in Super. So a lot of unknown variables here, but I got FaZe going 5-0. I mean, they're the best team in the game right now, and so I have to just give them every win. Then coming in at the number 2 seed at a 4-1 record, I actually have the Toronto Ultra. Looking at Toronto's schedule, they play FaZe, Boston, Thieves, Heretics, and LAG, and the only loss I gave them was actually to Atlanta FaZe. I'm giving them the win over LAT, right? They just beat them on land. They absolutely smoked them on land. Of course, I think LAT can beat Ultra, but in all fairness and no bias, I'm giving that win to Toronto, which will give them the 2nd seed in my prediction. Moving into number 3, also at a 4-1 record, but lost the tiebreaker, I do have LA Thieves. LAT's schedule here, Surge, C9, Ultra, LAG, and Ravens. Obviously, the only loss coming to the Toronto Ultra, as I just said. I think LAT is going to have a really good split again, but I could see them losing to Ultra, but also, I mean, Surge is a team they could potentially lose to. C9's a team you can never count out, so you never really know what's going to happen, but I'm still confident in my team to have a pretty good split. And then the number 4 seed, number 4 with a 4-1 record, losing the tiebreaker. So as you can see, a lot of tiebreakers here. I got the Vancouver Surge at number 4. Surge's schedule on screen. The only loss I have them to, of course, I feel like this is going like, it's going like down the line perfectly right now. I have them losing to LAT this weekend. Matches are actually today. So if you're watching this on Friday or anytime this weekend, there's probably matches on, and I'm watch partying right now on the channel. So come tune in and say what's up. But Surge, I mean, they're a great team, right? They just got to the finals, so I have them going 4-1 at the 4 seed. My number 5 seed with a 3-2 record, I do have Cloud9 New York. C9 has a pretty interesting schedule, playing the new OPTIC, coming up against LAT, new Rocker, and obviously Boston Breach and Vancouver Surge. 3 wins for them. I have them beating OPTIC, Rocker, and Breach, losing to Thieves and Surge. I think the OPTIC series should be interesting this Saturday to kind of just see how it plays out, but C9's been together all season. The chemistry is more there, and they're a good hardpoint team. They're a good SND team, so I do have them taking down OPTIC. But overall, I mean, they could potentially lose OPTIC. They could potentially lose to Rocker, depending on how that goes. You never know what you're going to get from Boston, so this is a pretty unpredictable schedule, I think, for Cloud9. My number 6 seed, also at a 3-2 record, but losing the tiebreaker, I have OPTIC Texas. OPTIC is obviously one of the hardest teams to predict in all of this, right? We know how good they were, at least especially online with HAVOK previously, and now you bring in Skies, who many look at as an upgrade over Kenny. You know, I try not to buy into scrim bucks around here, but the scrims for them have either looked pretty good or pretty mid. It's kind of been back and forth. Going up against Rocker, C9, Heretics, Falcons, and FaZe. Feels like a pretty winnable schedule for them, other than FaZe. I mean, I definitely think they're probably going to lose to FaZe, but I feel like any of those other teams they can beat. If you couldn't tell, my 2 losses for them were FaZe and Cloud9, as we've already touched on. So I can see OPTIC having a pretty good online split, but also seeing how this team performs on LAN, I think is going to be the bigger thing. My number 7 seed at a 2-3 record, I do have the Carolina Royal Ravens. I'm actually very interested to see how Ravens play this split, because I feel like them potentially making a roster change, bringing in Kenny and dropping Vivid, and then that not ended up happening, could have potentially chalked them mentally, right? You can see what happened to like the Surge back in MW2 when Pred was supposed to go to OPTIC, and then that deal fell through, and then they kind of just teetered out the rest of the season, didn't really have too much else happen. Hopefully this doesn't happen to Ravens, because I actually like this team. I like the guys on this squad, and I want to continue to see them be, you know, one of the upper middle pack dark horse type of teams, but schedule-wise is not easy, going up against FaZe, Surge, and Thieves. So those are the 3 teams I have them losing to. And it's definitely a tougher schedule. Ravens had an easier schedule in the beginning of the season, so this back half of it's going to be a little harder. And then rounding out the winners bracket at 2-3, I do have the Miami Heretics. I think for Miami, they kind of, you know, hit their ceiling at Major 1, getting that top 3. Now they bring in Super for Lucky, which I feel like should make them better. Super's been really good in Challengers. Touted is one of the better Challengers players the last couple seasons. and is pretty good at every single mode in Challengers. In the league, he played that one series earlier this year when he replaced Metals because he was sick. and he was a nasty in SND, but got farmed in the respawns. They go up against Falcons, Optic, FaZe, Ultra, and Rocker, so not an easy schedule, and we don't know what to expect for this new Falcons team. We don't know how Rocker is going to play, bringing on Kenny, so I have them going 2-3, losing those 3 middle series, and then winning the 2 series at the top and the bottom. For me, Heretics, I really put them in the 8 seed because of the Real and Rencore diff. I just think those guys have been so good and so consistent, which is why I have this team at 1-4 and the 9 seed, and it is Minnesota Rocker. I'm really hoping this Rocker team with Kenny plays better. Schedule-wise, it feels like it could be winnable for this team, right? They're a dark horse team that feels like they always go game 5. Going up against Optic, Breach, Ravens, New York, Heretics, not playing any of the top 4 teams, right? They're not playing FaZe, they're not playing Surge, they're not playing Thieves, they're not playing Ultra. They actually have a pretty winnable schedule. Rocker disappointed on LAN previously. Now they bring in Kenny, who individually has not been great. I hope he's better. I kind of want to expect him to be better, but I just can't bank on that. So for my predictions, unfortunately, I have him at the 9 seed. Then coming in at number 10, also 1-4, I have the Boston Breach. Boston, to me, just continues to be one of those teams that, like, overperforms at certain moments, like at the Major when they beat LA Thieves in Winners Round 1, and it kind of prevents them from making a roster change. Monetarily and the finances of this org, I don't know if they even can make a roster change. But schedule for them is winnable if you get the good version of the Boston Breach. But if you get this version that especially I feel like you can get online at certain moments where, like, Purge, Awakening, Cammy, you never really know what's going to happen with them. Snoopy's usually pretty consistent. This schedule is going to be pretty tough. I think the one win for them I had was versus LAG, but I could see them being a Falcons team or even beating a Rocker team if they don't come to play that day. Then we get to our final 2 teams. It still is LAG and Falcons, which kind of sucks to say, but I just don't know what to expect for these rosters, and the people that they've picked up, you know, haven't really done a whole lot in the league in recent years, so it's kind of hard to predict them to do better. But at the number 11 seed, I actually do have the Vegas Falcons going 1-4, and I unfortunately have LAG in last with a predicted 0-5 record. For Falcons, I gave them 1 win, and that was going to be over the Boston Breach, as you can see on their schedule. They actually have a pretty rough schedule. This is definitely a tougher one for a new team. For me, it's just kind of the Pred diff. Like, Pred is one of those guys that, I mean, as he said, as everyone says, is a top 3 to 5 sub every single year he's basically in the league. I expect him to just be able to get a diff against one of these teams, whether it's Miami or Boston or maybe even Optic, who really knows, where he can kind of win them a series or win them a map that'll end up winning them the series ultimately. So for me, it's just the Pred diff I'm kind of banking on, him being a superstar player in the league. And then for LAG, it's just not an easy schedule, right? Surge, Thieves, Ultra, 3 of the top 4 teams, Ravens and Boston, 2 of those middle of the pack teams. They could win some of these, don't get me wrong. This team for LAG is hard to predict because they got 2 new players. You got Lunars, who I feel like hasn't even played that much, right? He's only played like a stage in the league. I mean, Kismet's been really good. Johnny and Fellow were good in challengers. I expect them to be a bit better at SND, especially with Johnny, because he's nasty at search and destroy. So maybe they could steal a game 5 here and there, but I just have them at 0-5 because I just don't know what to think of this roster, and they don't have an easy schedule. But now let's talk about my predicted bracket for the Major. You can see the seeding on screen, right? So in winners round 1, it would have FaZe versus Heretics, which I'd have FaZe winning. I would have Surge versus C9, which I think would be interesting, but I got Vancouver taking that one. Ultra versus Ravens, I have Ultra taking that. And then LAT versus Optic, I have LA Thieves winning that one. So I have all the top seeds winning those. Like I always say, there's usually an upset. So, you know, one of those will probably end up being wrong, but hopefully a lot of this is wrong because if I get all these correct, it's just too boring. But then we go to losers. It would be Miami versus Rocker. I got the Rocker winning that series in losers bracket. Kenny on land with these young guns. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. C9 versus LAG. I got Cloud9 taking that. Ravens versus Breach. I got the Ravens winning that. Although that one could be interesting if this Ravens team mentally is not really, you know, clicking anymore. And then Optic versus Falcons. Pred versus his old team on LAN. I'm going with Optic anyways. I'm going to give them the win. Losers round 2. Rocker versus C9. I'm going Cloud9. Ravens versus Optic. I'm going Optic. They haven't been able to beat Ravens yet, but I think fresh team on LAN versus a Ravens team, which I feel like is going to be a little bit hit or miss this split. I'm giving it to Optic and pushing them into the top 6. Then we go up to winners round 2. FaZe versus Surge. I got Atlanta FaZe. Ultra versus LAT. I got LAT. I think they get their bounce back. They lost on LAN this past Major. I have them losing online. I think they get their bounce back in a good series there to go into winners finals versus FaZe. And then my winners finals, FaZe versus LAT. I got Atlanta FaZe winning that one. Now let's drop down and finish out the rest of losers before we get to our grand finals. I'm also looking over here because this is where I have like what I wrote down. Ultra versus Cloud9, I got Toronto Ultra. Optic versus Surge, I got Surge. So I would have Cloud9 and Optic out T6. Then it would be Ultra versus Surge for top 3. Loser would get top 4. I do have Ultra winning that one. So I got Surge going out top 4, Toronto top 3. LAT versus Ultra, I got LA Thieves winning that once again to get a rematch of the Major 1 Grand Finals, FAZE versus Thieves. And I got Atlanta FaZe winning that one. FaZe, to me, just looks like, how can you pick against them at this point, right? Of course, biasly and objectively and all those things, I want LAT to win. I think they're capable of winning, right? I think most people think they're probably capable of winning an event. And you got to think it's going to happen eventually. But how can I not predict FaZe to win, right? They're back-to-back-to-back on LAN. They've only lost 2 SNDs on LAN in that time, both of those to Thieves at EWC and at Major 1 Winners Finals. These guys have just been godlike on LAN, and I can't not pick against them. And this would be a 5-0 undefeated split for FaZe and winning the finals, which the only team to ever do that was Cold War FaZe. So maybe this new version of FaZe, this potential dynasty of Atlanta FaZe, can get it done. But those are the predictions for Major 3 quals and those are the predictions for Major 3 qualifiers and the event. Let me know what you think about this. Who do you have facing off in the grand finals of Major 3? If you had to predict right now for this first week of Major 3 qualifiers, we don't really know anything yet, put it down in the comments. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, sub to the channel. We're on the road to 10K, and hopefully I'll see y'all in the next one.